Hi everyone, and welcome to Tap Into Your Creativity. I don't know what happened, but we got paused there for a minute. Here she is. I'm bringing Tam Gryn, and sorry about that. Technology happens, I guess, sometimes, but thank you for sticking it out and coming back in. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, I don't know what happened. It was the weirdest thing.
Internet.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So we left it off. You went back to after the Sorbonne, the Sorbonne that you were in France and studying art history. Then you went to live in Israel for a little bit, and then you studied there international politics, and that must have been fascinating to be there.
Very eye-opening.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. And then so you're done with all your studies, and now how do you even start to get into the art curation?
Yeah, so after I finished my studies, I worked as a journalist for a little while. I think, writing is a huge part of curating, but it's always been at the forefront of what I wanted to do. But also politics, which is what I studied, because for me, the way I see art and the way I see politics is like they always come together. Like politics is a movement of masses of people, which is what I'm interested in. But art is it's a way to move people like emotionally from their core. So for me, those two things have always been related, have always been, part of the same thing. So after working as a journalist for a little while, I got a job at the Artist Pension Trust, which is one of the biggest art collections in the world. And I was working within the Curatorial Department. So I got to work with amazing institutional curator mentors. And I was part of their selection committee. So I was specifically focused on emerging art, which up until this day is my passion. And each of these curators had a different specialty in terms of the regions of the world that they focused in and the different mediums and practices that they focused in. So of course, that was like the best school in the world in terms of how to select an artist, what is potential, and how to curate from a very institutional point of view. And I worked there for a few years. Then I moved to New York when I started having my own personal practice as a curator. So I used to work with different galleries, knocking on their doors, trying to get on their calendars, proposing independent shows. I worked a lot with charity shows. Charity is another aspect that I love to include in my practice somehow, like anything that's mission driven. So my first show as an independent curator in New York was together with one of the biggest charity organizations in Latin America, which is called Techo, which means roof. And they build homes for people in Latin America who don't have a home. They're super well known. They work in every single country. And then we did a fundraiser for them. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I had really good allies, but I just decided to call up some of these artists that I had met, throughout my career, which most of them, nowadays are very established artists like Jose Carlos Martinat and people like that. So we used,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was very ambitious, to call them, like Jose Carlos is in Peru, and I would get a piece from him shipped to New York City to put in this show in Chelsea. I don't know how, but we managed to do it. And we raised 100 grand in one night for this charity. So that was huge.
Wow.
And then I knew that this is what I wanted to keep doing, because I could see how by creating a very strong narrative in terms of bringing the artist message to the forefront, we could really get people to connect to a mission and be part of it, either by acquiring a piece and donating to people in need, or even to blow people's minds and change mentalities, open people up to like new ideas and perspective at a political level.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that, it's so important, like what you're doing. And in a very different way, I'm trying to do kind of like the same thing here by, working with a community of artists, which I call my army of artists. And together we're making a difference because we are donating all this money to Feeding America. And it feels good. It feels good to help others who are in desperate need. And so it's a good feel for the artists in my particular project that I'm doing. So I really do understand where you're coming from, because I do have that feeling and that passion to help others and to create and to inspire people. So yeah, for sure.
Yes.
So tell us, Tam, a little bit about what is your process of selection of artists?
So right now I'm curating for Showfields in New York City, which is at the intersection of art and retail. So we have a space.
So let's make a pause there, because I maybe a lot of people don't know really what Showfields is. So, and you are the head curator there. So let's just talk a little bit about what is Showfields.
Yes. So as I said before, internet went down. I'm very interested in how art marries other industries. And the reason why I'm interested in this is because I believe that art needs to expand and find new audiences, and artists need to find new economies at the same time. So this is what I've been trying to do, most of my career. I don't want to stay within the white cube, community of the art world. I want to meet the rest of the people halfway and see what impact does art have on the outside world, so to say. Mm-hmm. So Showfields was born out of the observation that even, a year and a half ago when Showfields was born, before COVID, now it's even more ironic to speak about this, but out of the observation that the digital world was becoming much more interesting than the physical world sometimes. And we wanted to change that. And what do I mean by this? When the same way you and I discovered each other on Instagram, as a curator, I can discover hundreds of artists in 10 minutes on Instagram. It's this tool for discovery. In the same way, if you use Instagram, you get ads for all of these small businesses, amazing retail companies that, they have very high values. They're all vegan, they're sustainable, they're diverse, they're owned by young people who have values for this that are relevant to our generation.
Yeah.
And the paradox is that when you walk the main streets of most cities, like if you walk around Soho or Fifth Avenue or Lincoln Road in Miami, there is nothing to discover. It's very, very boring, actually, because there's only very few big box brands who can afford to be there. So we realized that young founders...
It's so true. It's so true.
Of companies and young artists don't even have access to their own cities and their own main streets. Right. So that's why Showfields was born, and we have a building in the middle of NoHo in New York City on Bond and Lafayette Street. It's a beautiful 4-story historical building. And every 6 months, we have an entire new curation of small businesses, young brands, and artists. So we come up with a concept. And every single person who participates in our curation has to align with that concept. For example, we're right now opening our second location in Miami. That's going to be open on November 16. So we came up with the concept of sustainability and water rising. And why did we come up with that concept? Because we went around all the artist studios in Miami, and we realized that the artist community in Miami is very concerned and wants to do something about changing our patterns of sustainability in this. So we want to give our first step in Miami, giving an ode to the city, but at the same time, addressing this concern and making ourselves accountable to create a better reality. So when I say making ourselves accountable, I mean the artists are making a whole industry like retail accountable. And that's where I see the power of art when marrying another industry like retail. So we're opening this curation. All of the building materials that we used were sustainable, like recycled plastics. The counters, the fixtures of our building, our whole design team aligned on the concept. We are commissioning artists locally that have done years and years of research on sustainability. Some of these artists are also marine biologists. They're experts on the ecology.
Wow.
In Miami. They're all
very complex, a lot of layers to this.
Very interdisciplinary, which I love. And we are also working with brands that want to push a sustainable agenda. For example, we're working with the furniture brand Cartel, who just came out with a chair designed by Philip Stark, the first ever artificial intelligence chair that was designed on a software. But at the same time, it's the first, it's a chair that is using only clean recycled plastic. So there's a lot of brands nowadays that want to push a sustainable agenda. So we give them a space to exist in a high traffic area and to collaborate with different artists in order to create one whole experience that is talking about sustainability for the next 6 months as we open Miami. And then 6 months later, we'll have another topic that is relevant to the current moment. And all artists and brands will align on that topic. So it's always an experience to be discovered in the middle of the city, where usually you can't really find artists or small businesses. So that's
so, Showfields a year and a half. I mean, that is a very small amount of time to have grown the way you have. I mean, not only, on social media, you have grown, you have over 60,000 followers. Your artists that you represent are incredible artists. But it sounds like a very ambitious project, because you have one that's happening in Miami, one that's happening in New York. They're intertwining with each other. You're finding all this sustainability from the artists, but also from the structure itself. So who came up with all this idea? You did?
So Showfields is a company that's founded by 3 people, Tal Nathaniel, Amir Swickel, and Katie Hunt. Okay. Each of them different background in retail, in production, and art, and in real estate, which are, 3 of the core pillars of what we do. And I joined before they opened the entire first building in New York City.
Wow.
As dancer, just like, come and add some art, because Showfields stands for art and retail. Like, show is art, right. Fields is brands. So I think it was known from the beginning that this is the problem that we're trying to solve in order to bring, the most interesting artists and brands to the forefront of different cities in the physical realm. And then slowly in this past year and a half, we have discovered exactly, how we want to do that. And of course, we're still a baby company and it's a learning process, but now, we've proved our concept.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm wondering how, COVID has now affected not only Showfields, but the artist in itself, and and the shows, and to be there in in person, or how what's happening?
That's a brilliant question. So of course, when the lockdown started back in March, we were in the middle of switching out our curation. So everything was dropped, halfway, drywall debris, artwork being shipped in, just like everything, time had to stand still for a moment.
Yeah.
We had an upcoming curation in New York City, which it was the first time that I invited an outside curator to bring their own vision because part of our mission is to support curators, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in 1 second. So we brought in Tax Collection, which is a huge online platform for artists. If you don't know them, go check them out. They're going to change your life. And they were in charge of the curation in New York City. So we had to stop everything, close our store, and we were thinking of ways to sustain our whole ecosystem of brands, artists, and ourselves while the store was closed. And we actually came up with an amazing concept. So what we did right, when the lockdown was started, was move everything online. We moved all of our brands and all of our artists to e-commerce. And we got really early on the wave of this live craze, just as we are doing right now.
Yeah.
We developed a technology that you can click to buy from a live video. So imagine that you and I are discussing your work and a little thumbnail comes up and people can click and buy from that live video. So wow. We started inviting other curators who, of course, also had their whole year canceled, to select 10 artists that they wanted to support, to upload works into our site, to go live and discuss and sell these works. And with our technology, as the curator is talking about the work, you as the audience member have a chance to connect, to participate, to chat, and buy the work immediately. So it was creating a new connection that honestly was even better sometimes than the physical world itself. Because when you walk into a gallery in Chelsea as an audience member, you have no idea who the artists or the curators are beyond the little text on the wall. There isn't really like an in-depth discussion.
No, there's hardly any interaction except for what you're reading.
Yeah, which is the reason why the art world is so separate from the rest of the world, in my opinion. But this idea of doing lives within our website that people can speak to the curator, to the artist, and also acquire, created a lot of like community building and collector building, because collectors, of course, they're passionate about art too. And they wanted to interact with the curators and the artists, and they wanted to support, especially, when people are not traveling, they're not eating out as much, they're not spending on...
They're actually being at home staring at their walls, and they're like, maybe I need a new painting. Right?
100%. So we caught onto all of this extremely fast. And I still can't believe like the amount of work it took from our whole team, and how everyone mobilized, and our CEO who had the vision to put everything on e-commerce. It was just an insane movement that worked. So now we host a couple of lives a week, every week, with a new curator, with new artists. We have like 500 artists in our platform from all around the world. Artwork is sold, on a weekly basis. And even though we reopened our New York location in July, the physical world is not the same as it was last year.
Right, so right.
To grow our platform and to give more artists more opportunities to sell their work.
So I have two questions that are, I think one follows the other, but first let's talk about, how do you actually pair up with other curators, and how do you find each other, and how does that partnership look like?
So when I worked at the Artist Pension Trust, part of my job was to find curators in every city, which we used to call them associate curators. The Artist Trust was a collection of 2,500 pieces that had a committee of 9 curators that were selecting those works. But in order to reach emerging art communities around the world, we would find a curator locally, say in Buenos Aires, and then they would nominate artists into our platform, and we would review as a committee, select, and then either approve or not. And this was a whole process. So I had the fortune to have made a lot of good curator friends around the world who are still my friends, I don't know, 10 years later. So I was super grateful to give them the opportunity to, you know,
Bring them in.
to bring them in. And, you know, I'm sure so many, like in the art world, everyone speaks about supporting artists, which is the most important thing. But very few people are aware of curators in general. How do they make a living? How do they support themselves? How can we support curators so that they can keep supporting artists, include them in their shows? So this is an important topic for me as well. So I called up so many curators, you know, either the people that I didn't knew that I've always wanted to work with, which was an amazing opportunity. Now I have great relationships with them. People that I had approached, you know, at Art Basel being like, hi, nice to meet you. I know the work I love to do. You know, it's just reaching out.
Right. I have my army of artists and you have your army of curators.
Yeah.
And it's all about collaborating. It's all about, you know, doing something that it's out of your comfort zone, because, you know, that will put you in a zone where you will absorb something new and something good will come out of that.
Yes, 100%. I think it's about, you know, we all have our truth that we need other people to understand. At least that's like that for me.
Yeah.
So, you know, once you can transmit that message to someone else, who, you know, is in your same field, is in your same industry, and has the same interests as you to support artists. I think the key was to come up with a win-win formula, which the creator can win, the artist can win, we can stay afloat, and we can still donate to charity, which is the other part. So for every person that joins our lives, we wanted to donate $1 to the charity of the curator's choice. And we started doing this in April, and it's October now. I think we've donated over $30,000 to charity at this point.
That's incredible.
You know,
that's really cool.
And there's no way not to do that in 2020. I mean, there's so much shifting and moving, and so many people, you know, losing their jobs, and it's honestly like there's so much tragedy happening at the same time at every level of society that we wanted to give people an option to feel like they can help others just by showing up.
Yeah.
So you can't afford a piece, but you're interested in art, and maybe you're not employed at the moment, or you're struggling, you can just show up and help, you know, contribute.
Exactly. And that was my whole purpose for doing this. Mm-hmm. You know, turn down the noise that's out there, because the noise is overwhelming. And if we could just give them an hour of just fun, creative, passionate, you know, artists that are now more than ever willing to open their studio doors and sharing everything that they have to inspire people at home, it's incredible. I mean, it's something that I feel very fortunate that we both have touched on the same idea, from coming from a different, you know, from a different perspective, but having the same goal. So, yeah. So tell us a little bit about, like, I'm an artist. If I want to advance in my career and I want to go forward and I want to be seen and I want to, you know, curators like yourself to look at my work, what kind of noise, where do I start? How do I do this?
Okay. So the most important thing for me, I'm not speaking on behalf of other curators, but I need to understand, and this is the first question I ask artists, unless I can get this message pretty immediately, which is the goal. What keeps you up at night? Like, I need to understand what's behind your work, what makes you worry, what makes you sick, what makes you crazy. Like, what's the mission behind your work? I think this is the most important thing, you know, because art for me, it's just not only an aesthetic experience. It has to have our backup research to it. So, you know, I'll give you an example. When I lived in New York City, for years, you know, visiting artist studios, I saw that so many artists, or most artists, were making work that was social political or very introspective. And you can see that in a city like New York, where everyone's on top of you, where there's so much happening at the same time, this is the kind of work that you see. Now, when I moved to Miami, 3 years ago, I was very surprised to see that artists in Miami are mostly talking about the environment and architecture and the relationship between the environment and architecture, because you have so much water around you that it's almost claustrophobic, and you have you know, space and distance from the artwork so that you can see and take it in. And
Right.
so as a curator, I need to see this pattern. Like, I need to see who you are as an artist. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to solve? And how is this translated in your piece? If you are a multimedia artist, then how can I see this message throughout all of your mediums? How can I see the same message in all of your pieces? It's that voice that I'm mainly looking for, and I think the winning combination is to have that voice, and also to have like very impeccable technique, very impeccable aesthetic that, you know, together makes for a successful piece. Now, I can give you a lot of other sort of advice that is more practical in terms of please answer emails, please have an updated website, social media. Like I said, it just has to be straightforward. I need to understand who you are just by looking at your feed. And being a go-getter like you are, you know, just trying to be known, to get your name out there, to connect with other artists everywhere, so that you're part of the global community.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for example, I find it very important to be a part of, when I call my army of artists or my community of artists, is my community of artists at large. I'm from Mexico City, so I want to still be connected with Mexico. So I reach out to my Mexican community. I know people in Australia, so why not reach there? Next month, I have someone from Egypt. Like, you know, so we are global, we are one, and together, you know, we are making a difference. And I think that, you know, a lot of the artists that I have, you know, some of the newer artists, or not as established, I guess, emerging ones, are more curious to know, you know, what is always the next step? How do you utilize social media in your favor? Which way to move? Because there's thousands of options out there. Yeah. And it's just really hard to navigate yourself through thousands of options.
Yes, I think that you're right. I mean, social media, I noticed during this pandemic that even I was, you know, I wasn't very active on social media. And when I was looking for other artists and curators that I've always admired their work, and I've read their, you know, their reviews and things like that, I realized that a lot of the people I admired were not on social media either. As curators, this is not a community that is on social media. But I was craving that connection during confinement. I kind of wanted to know what Cecilia Alemani or someone like that is thinking right now. So I decided that even I was going to try to, you know, to put myself out there more, because we need these digital tools of discovery, especially now more than ever. Right. But there is other things that I look for in artists that are more, you know, personal to my practice. Like, I love artists that are interdisciplinary, for example. Like, I am against every single rule of the art world that says that artists cannot be architects, or cannot be cartoonists, or cannot be illustrators. Like, scratch all that. I want artists that can be expansive in their practice, that can intersect with other industries. I love artists who, you know, like, I'm working in Miami right now with artists who are marine biologists, with artists that are architects, that can understand that art can have power over other industries as well in other worlds.
Right. And it's problem solving. It's just your mind is, like you said, you get away from the white cube and you see it from the outside,
Yeah.
right? So you're not always like, in this little square, but you can stand on top of it or on the bottom of it and have just a whole different angle of where you're coming from. And your input might be even, better or more assertive
Yeah.
almost, than staying in that box.
I just think the idea of the white cube is interesting because it means isolated. So when you walk into a white cube and you experience a piece and you see the whole narrative of that artist, from beginning to end of an exhibition, you don't have any other stimuli. You are focused on that artist's work, and that is a beautiful thing. But it's not necessarily relatable to the rest of the world.
Right.
So how can we, instead of isolating art, make it live in the middle of any other chaos that's happening? And how can we still open our mind and still get this message that is going to broaden our horizons for whatever the topic of that exhibition is, if it's sustainability, if it's, gender rights, whatever it is that the artist is talking about, in the middle of life, in the middle of an abandoned building, in the middle of a store, in the middle of New York City, in the middle of the street. Like, it just has to have an effect that is integrated with the rest of the world.
Right, right. And where do you think you see art going in the future? Like, how do you see this playing out?
So my particular vision is that the same way that we're marrying right now art with retail, and I've tried to do this with other industries. Like when I first arrived to Miami, I tried to merge art with nightlife because I felt like that's where I could find most people. I want to integrate art with big industries that need change. For example, healthcare. Like, how can we, through the observations of artists who are the prophets of our time, reimagine a healthcare space that is both medical and holistic and creates an actual healing experience through the aesthetics and the sensorial power of art? And like that, I can imagine art like sort of taking over different industries, like politics, like, I just want artists to be the most desired people in this economy, in this society, because of their ideas to improve and make everyone else accountable.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I mean, I think that there is definitely room for all of that. I think that, there's many layers, like I've said before, into the complexity of the world that we're in right now. We are kind of like in ¿cómo se dice? Agua movediza.
Like quicksand.
Yeah, like quicksand. We just don't know where we're walking necessarily. We have no control of what's happening except for what we're creating and doing in our studios. And, hopefully this will all be recorded, and, and in 10 years from now, we can go back and say, wow, yeah, we were the poets of the time. We were creating, things that matter, things that made a difference, things that made you think or made you happy at the time where you were miserable. I think that, I'm creating a book actually of all the artists that have been participating in this art COVID project, and where I'm going to be recording every single art that we've sold for Feeding America, to have something to look back and say, hey, I was a part of this. So I think it's important for artists to have that in mind, to not also just be by ourselves, but be a part of something bigger than ourselves and experiment and getting out there and, you know, talking to someone like you, or Showfields, that, you know, that is definitely, you said it's a baby company, but it's really growing at rapid steps. I mean, it's
Yeah.
going, you know, to the future to really like find that balance between this world that we're living in and something sustainable and something just out of the box.
Yes, and I think people understand when you're outside of the artist community and you look inside, you think, oh, like wherever artists go, for example, is where real estate companies should invest because artists make neighborhoods better. And I think that's really a good analogy for how I see artists. Like whenever artists are researching any sort of topic, that society, like that aspect of society is going to change, and not only it's going to change, it's going to improve.
Yeah.
So where artists are putting their focus, that's where you should look. If you are an investor in any industry, there will be artists that are closely observing your industry and can give you more insight on it than anyone else because it's their job to observe the world. It's no one else is observing a tree and saying more than it's a tree. It's artists that are looking closely. They're looking at the trunk, they're looking at the leaves, they're looking at the different colors. And that same thing they're doing with everything else, including whole areas of our society. So right now, of course, because of the political environment we live in, so many artists are putting their focus on art and activism. And I have absolutely no doubt that this is going to bring a change and that it has brought a change, you know, with different little things that have happened, you know, this year. Maybe it's not going to be immediate, but the world is going to catch up after artists have. That's just how it is.
Yeah, what I say now, it's our time to listen and learn and really just open our hearts and reach out and hold hands with everyone who's around you and just put your best foot forward, because we are in a very unstable world right now. So we want to make sure that we have that, you know, at least, you know, if one person, you know, one person can do, can make change and can affect, you know, really in a great way, the way that we're living every day.
Yeah.
Would you, right? I mean, I think that, you know, for you being a curator, you actually have the opportunity also to meet and see so many aspects of art. And so I'm wondering if you, being in an institution where you were before and now carrying into something that it's very new and very modern and very futuristic, are you still applying some of your knowledge from then to now, or are you shifting completely?
You know, nothing is separate. You know, the same way that I started my career with classical ballet or classical music and then moved on to the contemporary. And I started my career as a curator in the most classic of galleries and collections. And now I'm doing something that it's such a new concept that it's even hard to grasp. You know, the past is the foundation. We can't ignore it. We need to acknowledge it and think, you know, how can we improve? So I always, you know, look at what's been done before, as, you know, in my research in terms of what, you know, how can we improve? How can we make it better? But there is no separation from the past. There's not even like a rejection. It's just an acknowledgement of, okay, this existed. There were people in the past who tried to merge art with other industries. I've researched all about these. I know why I think that was not a successful movement. Sometimes it was ahead of their time. Other times it's because they did research outside of the art world and then they brought it back into the gallery space instead of showing it to the rest of the world. So I'm always studying, I'm always researching. I mean, there's no other way to be a curator.
What do you think about artists that, want to be represented in galleries, or, being an independent artist and then going that route? Does one weigh more than the other, or both of them are as important?
I love this question because I don't believe in gallery representation in a way that it's exclusive. I really don't. I don't think artists should be tied in any way, shape, or form. I know many artists who, their goal is to be represented by David Swirner or Gagosian or one of the big ones. Okay, that's great. If that's your goal, then work for that goal. But art has to be free. We're the only industry that is not regulated. I do not believe that an artist at a young stage needs to tie themselves up to a young gallery and reject other opportunities. Plus, you know, I think if a gallery wants to showcase your work and, pay for production costs and give you 50% of the earnings, and this is an agreement that you can have, that's great. But in terms of that artist, that gallery holding you and being like you're mine and no one else's, I've never believed in that. I mean, we never do that with our artists. Our artists should be free to explore, to go, to show their work, to...
I agree. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And also to transcend into other industries, which I know most of my colleagues would not agree with me on this, but I do think artists need to use their skills to survive and not just like stay and starve inside their studios, and also to show other industries their message, like some, for example, your work is about immigration, right?
Yeah.
It would be amazing to see your work in the context of immigrants, like going to an immigrant detention center and see how people there react about your work, or teaching in that sort of context, or, going outside of the studio to see how the topic that you're researching is actually applied, and how that, I promise you, will improve your practice, and it will improve the lives of the people that you're reaching onto on the other side. So if you're a young artist, just ask yourself, what's your goal? What keeps you up at night? And anyone who tries to tie you up, I don't know, maybe has their own interest at heart before yours.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I mean, I think that everything that you've said is so current, so now, so needed to be heard. I just see this comment, thank you for acknowledging artists that are often on the forefront of change. I agree. I think that, we need more of that reassurance that we're in the right path and that we're doing the right things, and that we are validated, however you bring yourself in this world to be an artist and be validated that way. And sometimes the biggest critics is ourselves, and we need to just, get out of that cloud and just say we're here, and we're doing the work, and we're showing up, and because that's very important too.
Yes, I mean, the art world is changing fast. It's changing very, very fast. Maybe eight years ago or 5 years ago, it would have been considered blasphemy for an artist to collaborate with a brand. I think brands are the new patrons of the arts. I mean, who can we trust? Can we trust our government and their funding for the arts? No, we can't. Can we trust all like private corporations that give art grants? No. We need to find a way that support for the arts is as transparent as possible and as clean as possible. If that means collaborating with a cool young brand that has good values, then why not? Would you take a grant from this government before you do that? Why is that better? So just being...
But those are questions that are not being said out loud. You know what I mean? So I think that this is a lot of food for thought. I think that, that we should be listening to this kind of conversations more often, and not be afraid to, like you said, be transparent in what you're doing.
Yes, yes, I really believe in that. I think the Europe. I'll give you an example. Like the European mentality has always been, you know, like the government has to fund artists, you know, public grant has to fund artists, and that's like an ideal world. That's great, but we live in America, and we cannot trust the government to fund the arts. And if you ask
Yeah,
me,
I want to live in the Medici world.
exactly. If you ask me, we can't really trust anyone to fund us, to fund our industry. We need to, we like part of the transformation of the art world is because artists are realizing that they're entrepreneurs, and that's a painful thing to realize, and it's a very difficult road. Um, and that's why artists need to reach across the table and like really get out of their studios to keep sustaining their practice and to find opportunities that align with them and their research and their goals. And, you know, it's, we're not there yet, but we're definitely on the way of sort of creating this new movement that is going to free artists at the end of the day from this backwards past notion of the starving artist.
Yeah. And it could be terrifying to think about that, you know, and especially now where you're very limited as to where you can go and how you can do, but you can use the internet for research, for, you know, so you're limited until you say you're limited, right? So you're, like I said, you are your only barrier between yourself and getting out there or finding yourself.
And listen, it is terrifying. You know, I've seen it in the eyes of artists that realize, you know, funding is growing short and you actually need to go out and look for opportunities. But those opportunities are also growing. You know, we have social media. Why do we need a gallery? You know, that's a question that is legitimate. So many artists sell their work through their own platforms. They don't need to give 50% to anyone.
And 60 or 50% you're giving out, you know?
You know, in a world where galleries are expected to pay extreme amounts to attend the fair or else they're irrelevant, you know, what is the role of artists? Artists becoming gallerists on their own end. You know, all the rules are being blurred and artists have the freedom to choose. Now, there's so many brands that have realized that working with an artist is just going to expand their own message. Like, you know, the same thing we're doing at Showfields. If you as a brand are working really hard to be sustainable and you're creating, you know, sustainable clothing with sustainable packages and, you know, spending the dollars in order to make yourself accountable, working with an artist who has the exact same message as you, it's just going to amplify both of your voices, and it's going to create the most clean funding possible for that to happen. So
and for both of you to benefit and grow, and, you know, I mean, your exposure became double.
It's for exchange, and we're putting in the same level like the small businesses, young founders with artists. You know, you're giving the same platform, you've been put at the same level, you've been hired for your ideas, for your skills, for your knowledge. So I think that's the future of art.
So if anyone has a question, this would be the best time to ask a question for Tam. We only have a couple minutes left, but I just want to say, you know, everything that you've said has been so incredibly helpful, not only to me, but for this community of people. And, you know, I can't thank you enough for your transparency and for being you, because you have a beautiful soul. And I'm so glad that we connected, and you know, you're joining me as my army of artists, and here just to, you know, to help, because this is what you're doing. You're helping others, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much for reaching out, Sandra, and for inviting me. I love talking to you. I can't wait to see where you go with your invitations to artists and curators and your own work. And you know, all the artists that are listening right now, we always have open calls. We're very democratic about our selection process. So go to Showfields on Instagram, online, look at our selection of artists or curators, reach out, apply. Our next curation is going to be in early summer 2021, and it's all going to be about healing and recovering from this pandemic.
Oh, I love that.
Mental health, physical health, communal health. And, you know, so if you're listening and you want to apply, you know, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tam, and I'll see you soon. And thank you everyone for joining us, and we will see you on Saturday. And thank you again, Tam. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Hi everyone, and welcome to Tap Into Your Creativity. Today is Wednesday, November 11th. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. My guest artist is Pat Butinsky, and I can't wait for you guys to meet her. She's an incredible artist. She is an inspiration to me and to many others. She has been an artist for a very long time and an art teacher, and she's going to join us hopefully any minute now. Pat is joining us from New Jersey, from her home studio, and it has been truly a joy to get to know Pat and form a friendship with her. And Pat, if you're out there, please join us. And Leah says, my mentor, my hopa, my inspiration. I don't know what hopa is, but I'm sure it's an inside joke between you guys. And thank you for my friend Monica from Mexico who just joined. I'm super excited to have you here. Everyone who's joining, thank you so much. Just be patient with me, and Pat will join us any minute, hopefully. So I can tell you that it's been quite a passion to come to this point right now in my career, to say that I've had Tap Into Your Creativity for 8 months and counting. Hey Robin, how are you? Rachel, thank you all for being here. I'm just waiting for Pat to join us, but I was just saying that it's been a joy, and you are the guys that keep me going. Thank you for your incredible messages. I'm so happy that we are inspiring you at home, and just being here with me and joining me and supporting this incredible effort to help everyone in need. And here is Pat. I'm going to bring her in. We're just waiting for Pat to join us. My mom just joined me. Hi, Mom. And here's Pat. Hi, Pat.
Hi, I have my camera position wrong. I cut my whole head off. That's all right.
Okay.
Take my head off.
Yes. Well,
Right.
It's okay. I have it right on top of you. So we kind of, look funny.
Yeah. It wouldn't be the first time. And I'm on a stool and I can't get any lower in here because I'm at a high table.
Oh my God. Lots of friends are joining. Linda, Gretchen, thank you all for being here. Pat, thank you so much. I'm so happy it finally happened for us. I know last time we had sort of like a difficulty, and then the next time you were going out of town. So I'm just really, really excited that you're here today with me, and welcome into Tap Into Your Creativity. And thank you for believing in in this journey and being part of my army of artists. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I mean, I believe in, this army of artists. I think that this is a great community, and I like to call it a we community. And whenever we come together collectively, we're better, and we're